Welcome to the Champs App podcast. Champs App is your recruiting and development co-pilot. If you are a player, parent, or coach, make sure to check out more content and tools to help navigate the world of youth hockey at champs.app. Also, if you've listened to the Champs App podcast in the past and it has helped you with your recruiting or hockey development, please tell your teammates and friends about Champs App. It would be even better if you subscribe to the podcast and review or rate us on whichever platform you're listening to or watching us on. On today's episode, I talk with Joe Grossman, head coach of the Assumption University women's hockey program. We discuss his playing career as a goalie at Dartmouth College, then go into his time being a youth coach before returning to the Ivy League at Harvard. Joe shares his plans for the Greyhounds as they enter their sophomore season playing D1 hockey. This was a great conversation with Joe, so I hope you enjoy it. Introducing Champs Plus, our latest recruiting and development co-pilot tool designed to guide parents and players through every step of the journey to women's college hockey. With Champs Plus, gain access to exclusive recruiting insights, expert advice, and hockey development resources tailored just for you. Attend our monthly expert-led webinars covering timely topics throughout the recruiting cycle. Submit your questions before or during the webinar to get answers straight from the experts. New to the women's college recruiting process? Explore our age-specific playbooks for 12U, 14U, 16U, and 19U girls. These guides help you navigate the path to playing women's college hockey. For those further along, dive into our extensive library of articles and videos, discover insights on summer recruiting events, June 15th preparations, and the value of taking a gap year. With new, highly curated content added weekly, Champs Plus ensures you will always have the latest information to boost your recruiting efforts and enhance your hockey skills. Got questions? As a Champs Plus member, you can submit recruiting questions anytime through our app and get personalized answers that are published to the entire community. Feeling overwhelmed by the recruiting process? Coming soon, we will have Champs Plus discussion groups where parents and players share advice and experiences based on where they are in their journey. Visit Champs Plus now and unlock access to more recruiting insights, player development advice, and expert guidance for a fraction of the cost of a traditional advisor. I'm very excited to have on the podcast Joe Grossman, head coach of the Assumption Greyhounds women's hockey team. Hailing from Brockton, Massachusetts, Joe was a goalie who played junior hockey in Waterloo, Iowa, before attending Dartmouth College. After graduation, Joe coached at the youth level and the American Hockey Academy, Nichols College, and several other youth, high school, and junior programs. In 2017, he joined the staff at Harvard University working with the goaltenders and then added forwards to his responsibilities. Last season, he was an assistant with the Stonehill College Skyhawks, and then in June, he was named head coach at Assumption. Welcome to the podcast, Joe.
Thank you, Ray. I'm excited to chat with you today.
Great, yes, and folks who don't, I'm sure most folks don't know this. You and I actually had a conversation last summer while we were watching the USA Hockey event, so I actually got to know you a little bit then. But maybe give some folks a little bit more on your background, talking about how you started playing hockey and kid, and what made you become a goalie in the first place.
Yeah, so I remember that chat last year at in Oxford, Ohio. So yeah, it's actually kind of a ridiculous story how I became a goalie. So like you said, I was born in Brockton. We lived in Brockton, but we moved to Los Angeles when I was like 6 months old, and we were there until I was 7 or 8. But part of my dad's job, we got to go to a lot of sporting events, and we went to a ton of LA Kings games. But what we really like to do is go to the East Coast team's pregame skates in the morning. So we'd hop up to, I think it was Culver City, California, the old practice rink. And my dad says, I don't remember this, so I'm take my dad's word. He says we were watching the Philadelphia Flyers practice, and Ron Hextall was tending the net, and they were playing some sort of game, and he lost. And he turned around and shattered his stick over the crossbar out of frustration. And apparently I turned to my dad, tugged on his jacket, and pointed to Ron Hextall and said, Dad, I want to do that. So that was I guess that's how I became a goalie. Ron Hextall showing some frustration in practice.
Gotcha. Yeah, and he was known for showing a lot of frustration, and
Yes.
then but also was a great hockey mind because he ended up being an assistant GM with the LA Kings, and then went on to GM at the Flyers and the Pittsburgh Penguins. So
Yeah.
that's a pretty big introduction into goaltending. All right, and so what made you strap on the pads like in real life then? Like how did that all work?
So we were back in Massachusetts at this point, and the youth team I was playing for, the KP Walpole, King Philip Walpole, um, we were at the stage where somebody would volunteer to play goalie every week, and I played out. I was a forward, I guess, if you want to say that, but I don't know what it was. Every time the coach said, "Who wants to play goalie this weekend?" I was the first one raising my hand, and it got to the point where they didn't even ask anymore. They just looked over at me and kind of gave me first, like, right of refusal, I guess. And that was it. So I still remember I had my number was number 10. We had red jerseys, and I used the town Cooper pads, and eventually they just said, just bring them home every week, like they're yours. And that was it. Like I really didn't turn back from there. I think I played out like for a year, maybe a little less than that.
I'm actually curious. Did playing out and skating actually help you as a goaltender at some point?
Definitely. I think it would have helped more if I played out longer, honestly, but like I just loved playing goalie so much. That's what I wanted to do. It definitely helped. I think uh having an understanding of like what you're trying to do out there without, with having some actual experience is useful. Um but yeah, I think looking back, like if my kids want to play hockey, I'll have them skate out a little bit longer, but yeah, I was obsessed with it like right away. So I guess it was like I'm playing goalie or I'm not playing type of thing.
Gotcha. And how did your parents feel about you playing goalie? Because not only is it ridiculously expensive, but the stress that are put on parents watching their kid play goalie is pretty immense.
Yeah, I know. Yes, if I'm pretty sure there were times, especially when I got older, where my mom said, I haven't seen you make a save in a really long time because every time they come down on you, I have to turn away." Um, and I know like my dad and my mom never watched the games together. My dad would always be in like an upper corner, and my mom would be sitting in the stands. But it definitely was stressful on them, especially when you go from playing youth hockey, you go to high school hockey, which back then was like a big thing in Massachusetts. We had great crowds all the time, and then moving to junior hockey where there's 5,000 people at every game. I think it definitely increased their stress levels for sure. But yeah, I'm pretty positive. My mom said during the last like 3 4 years of my career that she didn't see me make more than a couple dozen saves because she was so nervous when the puck came down to me.
Well, obviously, you had quite a bit of success. You won a national championship in youth hockey. I think it was at the high school level. And then you went on to play in the USHL for Waterloo, the Blackhawks. Tell us about like that progression, and then how you ended up at Dartmouth.
Yeah, so I was like a very late bloomer physically. Like I was small, skinny, and my high school team was really good. So if you put all those factors together, I was not recruited at all in high school. I was a 5'10" ish goalie. I eventually got a little bit taller, but a 5'10" goalie for the number one/2 high school team in Massachusetts, where I only saw 10 shots a game really. Um, so I think most schools, looking back, or I remember hearing this from schools, said we didn't know what to expect out of you because we just didn't see all that much action. And like you said, my club team, the Junior Bruins, we won USA Nationals my senior year of high school, U18 national champions. That's where I kind of like, I guess, got noticed by schools for the first time, and that was April or May of my senior year of high school. Um, so it took a long time to get any real attraction from schools. Um, After that, I went to Waterloo. That got me to Waterloo, like that tournament. I had visited Waterloo the previous fall, um, just as like, I don't know, an unofficial junior visit. But that tournament really solidified me, I guess, as a prospect. And so I got drafted there second round. Um, actually, I with a teammate of mine on my junior Bruins team, we both got picked there, so that was nice. And I went out to camp there. I had a terrible training camp, like awful training camp, and they were like, just relax, like go play hockey. And then once I got there, it took me a little bit of time just to get used to. Honestly, it wasn't the pace of the game obviously was way faster than high school, but to be totally honest, it was the length of the game. We played 15-minute periods in Massachusetts high school. Going to 20-minute periods was a big adjustment. So going from 45-minute game to a 60-minute game and 25 games to 65 games was a big adjustment for me. But once I hit that, I found a rhythm, and I actually committed to Boston College. I'd say maybe around Christmas of that year. A few of my high school buddies played there, and I was gonna go back up Corey Schneider. But then I went on my visit, and I don't know, I just didn't feel it was the place for me. So I went back to junior hockey, and um, didn't have a great last year there. Our team was up and down. I really didn't get like uh, in the rhythm I got the year before, but I eventually came down to Dartmouth, Cornell, and Northeastern, and I just felt like way more at home at Dartmouth when I went there, and I love it. It's a great place, and my dad went to Northeastern, so that was something that honestly was like kind of stressful telling them that I wasn't coming there, but I think it worked out for the best, and I was happy with how it all worked out.
Well, it's nice to have so many options.
Yeah. Well, they came late. I tell this whenever I'm recruiting kids, especially the kids who are currently in the 2026 class where their recruiting window just opened, like, this is a marathon. And I know like none of them want to hear it, but it's true. Like, and I tell a lot of kids my story. I know it's different. Youth hockey on the girls' side to the boys' side is different. The girls don't have to go play 2 years of juniors, 3 years of juniors. But it's a long process for most kids, and persistence and patience will pay off for most kids out there, and it did for me. But yeah, I wasn't committed till I don't know February maybe of that last year of junior hockey, so it took a long time to get it figured out.
But once again, it worked out, right? So, and
Yes,
you got multiple offers, which ends up happening with most kids. And either way, all you
yeah,
need is one opportunity, right? That's that's
that's
that's what
right,
I
that's right.
that's what I tell everybody. You just need one. So maybe just talk about playing in the Ivy League. What was that like? And is it different, on the men's side versus the women's side?
So yeah, I mean, we had a great my freshman year. Our team was fantastic. Like we had seven guys from our team played at least one game in the NHL. We were a really really good team. Who worked hard. Had a great time with each other off the ice. It was one big family. Really was a great experience, a great entry into college hockey. Um, I think the one thing that always frustrated me about playing and coaching at the Ivy League level is that the calendar. Like we're at the Ivies, you're really restricted in what you can do. You start the season later. You're only allowed 29 regular season games. I think from a development perspective, it does hurt overall. Um, a little bit less practice time, but um, other than that, yeah, I'd say it was a similar experience. On the girls and boys side. Our women's team at Dartmouth when I was there was fantastic. I think they went to the women's Frozen for 2 out of the 4 years, maybe even three. Led by Sarah Parsons, former U.S. Olympian, friend of mine. Like they were awesome. They were dominant. Great to watch, and to see where the women's game has gone from back then to now is like night and day too. Like it's come so far. It's like amazing to see. But yeah, I'd say overall, my only gripe with the Ivies is just the restrictions on the calendar, I'd say.
Gotcha. All right. So we need to keep moving so that we can eventually get to assumption. Maybe just talk about why you decided to get into coaching after you graduated from college.
Yeah, so I'd always been coaching, I guess, just on the side, even just like goalie camps. Like I always helped out. Brian DeRocher was a mentor for me, still is, and I went to his goalie camps growing up, and I worked at them, and I
Long time,
felt
just for
like
folks know, longtime coach at Boston University who just
yes,
retired last year.
just retired. Yes, has been a longtime friend of mine, friend of my family, and helped me out a lot. Um, so I'd always had my toe in coaching, even though I got out of school and was working commercial real estate for a bit. I'd always been coaching on the side, mostly goalies. And as that progressed, I coached like some youth teams here and there, and just like got more into it. As the more I did it, the more I loved it, and realized that this is probably where I should be, and how do I figure out a way to get back into this full time? And it took me a while, but yeah, I feel like I've always been able to connect with players, whether boys, girls, men, women, doesn't matter, because I've been through it, right? I was a player. I was a player who, while I was really good, I was a late bloomer. I wasn't heavily recruited, and I didn't get to play a ton in college. So I've seen every way a player can go through the college experience. So I feel like I do a good job relating to players. Um, but yeah, I love connecting with that age group. That's really what it's about.
Got it. All right. So since you talked about being a goalie coach and going through the ups and downs of each stage of your playing career, maybe let's just talk a little bit about goalies. And maybe I'll ask you the most basic question: what makes a good goalie?
Ooh, what makes a good goalie? I'd say for me, what makes a good goalie is a short-term memory, short memory. Because I've always lived by an adage like no one in the building should be able to tell whether you've given up no goals or six goals based on your body language, and I think a lot of that is mentally just being able to say, hey, I just gave up four. Like I got to stop the next one. And I think having that mind of a goldfish, for lack of a better term, is really important and can get you through a lot of problems because, especially at this level, listen, if you're here, you're good enough to be here, right? It's trying to get through to that next level of consistency. And a huge part of that, like the majority of that to me, is mental. So I'd say a short term memory makes a good goalie.
All right, so this might relate to the answer that you just gave me, but I don't understand goalies very well. I certainly don't understand how to evaluate them. But when I track NHL goalies, I find that other than two, three, maybe four goalies in the NHL, most of them are inconsistent. That they have ups and downs, and significant ups and downs and swings in their level of play. Why is that position so inconsistent, generally speaking, or at least from my interpretation?
You're spot on there. I don't know what the answer is because I've seen the same thing. You'll have a goalie go through a professional season with a right around 90 or sub 90 save percentage in a random year, but the rest of their career they're above 9.2, 9.25. I don't know what it is. It can be a myriad of things. I think a lot of it comes down to the mental side of it. I think if you ask pros too, a lot of them still struggle with that. It's really hard. But I don't know what the answer is. I've never been able to figure out because it's something that it was hard. It's hard to be consistent. And the, I, I will say there were times where I felt like things just fell into place on the ice for me, whether that's seeing things super clearly or being able to anticipate, very well. And other times you feel like you did everything right and a deflection or just something, stupid happens and the puck's in the back of the net. So I don't know what the key to consistency is. If I can figure it out, I will let you know. But I don't know what the answer is to that.
Okay, all right, no problem. Well, like I said, I'm sure that there's a lot of money to be made if you can figure out how to make goalies more consistent, especially at the pro
Yes.
level. All right, so I got a couple more goalie questions. Very simple one. Does height matter in women's hockey for a goalie?
Um, I say no. I I don't think it does. You'll ask most coaches, If you ask them, who, most coaches who appear in here, if you ask them that, I bet they'll say yes. I don't really care. Because if you can move and you have that ability, you may have to be a little quicker than the big kid, but if you are, you are like great. I don't really look too much into the height discrepancy. Does it help being 6 foot or 5'11"? Probably. If you're able to fill that net, sure, but there are plenty of smaller goalies out there who can get it done too.
Beautiful. All right. So a bunch of height challenge goalies are going to be very happy with that answer.
I
So
hope so.
all right, last question, and I know this kind of almost gets into the recruiting side of things, which we're going to save for the end, but how do you evaluate goalies from a recruiting D1 coach perspective? How much of it is watching them, how they play during a game? How much of it is you getting on the ice with them and, you know, spending 15, 20 minutes, 30 minutes with them and seeing how they move around? And how much of it is really just, you know, something else, like just talking to them and understanding their mindset?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, for me, like, yeah, I like to have multiple views of goalies. And really, uh, I think honestly, goalies develop later than most players. I don't have any data behind that off the top of my head, but I believe that. Um, so I like multiple viewings of goalies, and the more I can predict what they're going to do out there in a certain situation, the better for me personally, because when I watch a goalie, I'm seeing it like I'm in the net, and if I can anticipate something and they're kind of on the same page, I'm like, okay, they get it. And I obviously look for skating nowadays. Um, every goalie plays on their knees like so much of the time in the crease, um, which is fine. But I look for that edge work. I look for that crispness, not just how fast can they get across the crease, but like, can they get across the crease quickly and be ready to make that next move without hesitation, without having to reset. So those are some things I look for. But I definitely like to see goalies multiple times. It's rare that I would see a kid once or twice and make a decision on them. I like to take my time recruiting goalies too. I know they probably don't love that, but that's how I do it. And so far, so good.
All right, beautiful. Thank you for those detailed answers. I'm sure there are a lot of goalie parents and actual goalies, you know, listening to this and going, okay, well, that's another piece of information that's very helpful. All right, we need to move on. We are going to come back to some recruiting questions a little bit later on, but now let's just talk about, you know, your time at Harvard. How did you end up at coaching at Harvard?
So I was involved with a lot of goalie work back then, and I was working at Stop It goaltending, and the Harvard job opened up, and I applied for it and interviewed and got it. That's really it. From there, I would say that was my first time working every day, day to day with a women's program. I'd had plenty of female goalies in my programs before, but that was really my first experience with the women's game, you know, day to day.
Gotcha. And over time, you increased your responsibility. You then also started working with the forward. So I'm sure your time skating out when you were a goalie as a kid in youth hockey also helped you a little bit with that. So maybe just talk about, you know, increasing your responsibility and what else you were doing besides helping the goalies out.
Sure. Yeah, I think you can ask other people who were involved with the program when I was there. I would say my role increased every day. I feel like in a great way. My first year, yeah, I was definitely just there for the goalies, but honestly, by my second year, I was giving presentations on goal scoring and just looking for tendencies amongst other goalies in the conference and nationally, and picking up like if I were a shooter against whatever goalie, this is where I would ideally want to shoot. So I started doing more and more of that stuff. And then yeah, eventually I became I feel like I was there probably more than any goalie coach. Not that I was there every single day, but I was there a lot. And then yeah, eventually I was hired like full time towards the end of my time at Harvard. and it was great. I worked a ton with the forwards, um, called out forward lines for 1 or 2 seasons, and really got comfortable with all the skill work that goes into it. And again, a lot of it originated from my perspective as a goalie and seeing what I struggled with or tracking tendencies in our league that um, I felt like we could focus more on as a group. And yeah, I did a ton of individual skill work in the early in the mornings, well before practice, and still maintained my relationship and all the work we did with the goalies. So um, we did a lot. I kind of did every role there, I would say.
Perfect. I love the fact that you used your goalie expertise to teach the forwards how to score on goalies. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah,
that's no better than getting the inside information from the person that you're trying to score
right.
on.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
all right, beautiful. All right, we got to keep moving. But obviously, things at Harvard got a little controversial last year. Folks can go research it on their own and see what happened. We had your other assistant coach that was with you, Lee J. Mirasolo, on the podcast also back when she was still at Harvard. And yeah, we're not going to go into the details of that, but I do find it interesting that both you two, you and Lee J, are now head coaches elsewhere. So I think that lends a lot of credibility to kind of what happened in the controversy, and that you guys, obviously, may not have been involved, probably not, given that how well you both landed on your feet. So maybe just talk about your year at Stonehill, and then we'll get into Assumption.
Yeah, and just kind of building off what you said, while our time at Harvard ended, I guess in a negative light, um, Lee J is one of the best people I've ever met in my life, and anyone listening to this show probably knows who she is and knows what she's all about. So I'll leave it at that. But she's a tremendous human being, and I'm excited to coach against her this year, December 6th for the first time because I've been with Lee J for 7 years. Every year I've been involved with women's hockey, I've been with Lee J. So this will be my first year without her. But yeah, so last year, um, after I was let go at Harvard by the new coach, Lee J said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know yet." Like my wife and I had just had a baby boy a week before or 2 weeks before, and I honestly was like, maybe I'll take a break. But the more I thought about it and the more I talked to Lee J, and she was head coach for the first time, I was like, listen, if I can help, I'll help. And at first, that that started as just helping out the goalies, and a couple weeks later, I was there basically every single day. So I did everything there. I even suited up in practice a couple times when we needed to give our goalies a rest. So I took a lot of pucks off the head from the Stonehill team last year. So yeah, we did it all, and it was honestly the most fun I've had as a player or coach any season of my life going with that team, where we started from, which was not great. I think we started 0-5, to coming back and winning the new hot title in dramatic fashion and going to the NCAA tournament in just the second year of the program was amazing. And that's a really good group of kids and great staff there with Lee J and Kendall. It's a place that really means a lot to me. It's a great group of people, but I'm very excited to beat them hopefully this year, if everything goes right.
Gotcha. All right, so let's move on to Assumption. So maybe just talk about how you got the job, and then a little bit about the school that's located in Worcester, Massachusetts.
Yes. So yeah, the I had no plans on leaving Stonehill until I did see the job open. So I was curious about it, and going through the interview process with everyone there in the administration, people on campus, and interviewing with the team itself via Zoom as a group was honestly a very enjoyable experience. It went really well, obviously, and when it came down to it, I felt that it was a good time to try to be a head coach, and with everything I've learned over the last 7 seasons, um, I think we're in a good spot as me personally and the team being so young. I think a lot of what I learned last year at Stonehill in their second year will help us this upcoming season in Assumption's second year of their existence. There's a lot of parallels between Stonehill and Assumption school and program, and I hope to bring those winning ways, to Worcester. So Assumption itself transitioned from Assumption College to Assumption University about 4 years ago. What they did is bring their 5 schools all under one umbrella. So the separation from the graduate programs and undergraduate programs, while it's still there, you can take graduate courses as an undergrad. So you can go do an accelerated MBA while you're an undergrad. There's a lot of opportunity for a really hands-on educational experience. So school of about 2,000 students, 500 a class. Um, Student teacher ratio is like 10 to 1. It's a very hands-on experience, as I mentioned. And those 5 schools I mentioned earlier are the Grennan School of Business, the College of Liberal Arts and Sciences, the School of Health Professionals, School of Graduate Studies, and the Froelich School of Nursing. So those 5 schools are now under one umbrella. Um, and brand new science center that was donated just a few years ago. Phenomenal building. It's like 50,000 square foot, all brand new. The business center, again, like everything's brand new. There's a whole interactive trading room where you can go access like any financial data in the world, play with Bloomberg terminals. There's a lot of experiences at a school like Assumption that I didn't know. I didn't know they were out there. And So far so good. It's been a good fit.
Gotcha. Maybe just talk a little bit on the hockey side, the facilities and playing at the Fidelity Bank Ice Center.
Yeah, so Worcester Ice Center is about a 9-minute drive from campus. 2 ice sheets there. We have a beautiful brand new locker room, all decked out in Assumption blue and white, Greyhounds everywhere. Um, awesome place, really great. I know parents, I've heard, enjoy it because there's a brewery in-house, there's a coffee shop in-house, and the rink's pretty new. There's a gym upstairs, there's a shooting room upstairs. Um, and yeah, it's a great facility in like a part of Worcester that's really been transformed, right next to Polar Park, where the Worcester Red Sox play. Worcester Railers play right down the street, and that whole part of Worcester has been completely transformed to a really up and coming neighborhood.
Gotcha. All right. So as you mentioned, this is the team is going into its second season. I did have Jack Sweeney, the original coach who put together the first team together, on at least a year or so before the team actually started. Maybe just talk about what happened to Jack, because I mean, coach leaving after 1 year just seems a little odd, unless there's clearly something else that they moved on to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know of the details. I know Jack did a tremendous job putting this team together. I saw him on the road often. I've known Jack since I was 16 or 17. He's a great guy, and I enjoyed competing against him last year. I don't know what the details were. I have no idea. I do know he sent me a very nice message when I did get the job, and I appreciate that because he's a good guy, and like I said, he did a great job putting this team together because it's hard. It's hard to build a brand new team, from scratch, and he did a really good job.
Yeah, and just to be clear, he won 10 games, tied four, so pretty good for a season, all things considered. And
Definitely.
even beat your team once. So
Yeah.
Stonehill. So, but here's my question for you. I did look at some of the stats. So in the 36 odd games that Assumption played last year, you only scored 69 goals. So that's less than 2 goals per game. So what are you going to do to increase the number of goals that you score next year? Maybe start applying some of the stuff that you did at Harvard on how to score goals on goalie.
I hope so. Yeah. Well, the good thing about that is we return all but I think 5 or 6 of those goals on the roster this year. We have a graduate transfer from St. Mike's, Michaela Langbacka, who should help with that. We have some really talented kids coming into the program this year. And I feel honestly, Ray, a lot of it, these kids now have a year under their belts at the college level. They know what to expect. We're gonna play a pretty aggressive, I would say, and unpredictable style. I won't go too far into that right now, but I think we're going to hopefully catch some people by surprise. And um, like I said, I think the fact that we return a lot of our scoring is a huge, huge thing. It's not like we only scored that amount of goals and then lost a third of it. Most of the kids are coming back. So I think a lot of that will naturally help us out, and maybe doing some things a little bit differently will help us out in that regard. Power play will help too. An improved power play. We will work on that for sure.
Gotcha. And so, without, like you said, sharing too many secrets, what is it that you're going to kind of bring from, Stonehill and Harvard to this team that maybe they haven't had before, just because you have a different experience than the previous coach?
Sure. I think, I like to think outside the box. I'm not afraid to try something different. If what I drew up isn't working, I have no problem altering things. A big part of my uh, goal as a head coach is to continue the focus as I have in the past on not only team development but individual skill development. And like every Monday for us is going to be all about skill development. It won't be a typical team practice. They'll be full of, it could be forwards down one end, D down one end, and then a goalie session after, followed by small area games or a 3-on-3 tournament. But every Monday for us is going to be development focused, because we have plenty of practice hours at the NCAA level. And uh, I don't want to sacrifice anyone's individual development, um, in trying to accomplish our goals.
Gotcha. Right. And as you kind of mentioned, you got a new grad student in, but the lineup is significantly weighted towards sophomores, just folks entering their second year. So clearly, there's going to be, like you said, the learning curve that they're going to be on, and that second year is going to hopefully be much better than their first year. Hopefully, no sophomore jinx for most of them. Maybe just talk about how you're going to be managing the team. I know you have Delaney Couture as your assistant. Maybe just talk about what the plan is for getting those players, coached in for their second year. That'll be different than their first year.
Yeah, I think in increased responsibility, I think a big part of a head coach's job is not only lies in dealing with your players, but also a big part of our job as a head coach is develop your assistant coaches too. Give them the responsibility that so they can learn themselves. And especially someone like Delaney, just, she had a great career at Providence College, and is someone that I want to give more responsibility to and to help her develop. We also will be adding a third coach part time who currently plays in the PWHL for PWHL Boston, and Taylor Gerard, who played at Quinnipiac and Lindenwood, who I think will be a massive addition to our staff and to our players. Someone who's still playing and can give an even better perspective on the women's hockey game in general than even I could or Delaney could, being retired. She's still in it, and I think she's going to be a huge addition to our program. So that's where our staff is kind of lining out right now.
Perfect. All right. So now I want to start moving into the recruiting side of things. A couple of months ago, I wrote an article about comparing, Newhaw to the rest of the D1 teams, as well as D3. So maybe just talk about the challenges of competing against the other D1 teams. I mean, you saw it firsthand last year when you went to the postseason and played Cornell. Wasn't pretty much wasn't a close game after the second period. Let's be candid, and maybe just talk about the challenge of just all the Newhaw teams, against the other D1 teams, excuse me, that they struggle to be competitive. Of all the games, all non-conference games, only one game was won by a single goal by all the Newhaw teams against the other conferences.
Yeah, it's definitely an uphill climb for most teams in our league right now. I do feel as the women's game is growing and more opportunities are coming that we will get to the point where the new high entry into the NCAA tournament is going to win that game one day. Like, will it be this year, next year? I have no idea, but that will happen. That's just sports. I think, obviously with the brand new programs like ours, we don't have the history that a Harvard or a Wisconsin has. There's no, that's not a bad thing necessarily. It's just reality. I think a big part of it is when I'm recruiting a kid to Assumption is like, hey, this is what our resources are. This is our reality. Um, do you want to be a part of something brand new? Do you want to be a part of that founding, that foundation to build this program up? Because I don't think any program that starts day one um, has everything that they necessarily may have 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road, whatever it may be. So yeah, it's definitely a challenge recruiting against some of those bigger schools, but a lot of those players who are going to end up at a Wisconsin, this isn't the right place for them anyway. So it's my job and our job as a staff to find the players and families who Assumption is a good fit for, academically, hockey wise, socially, all that stuff. So while it is a challenge, I will say this, I've always said this, every school has their challenges. I don't care if you are Wisconsin or wherever you are, every school has their challenges. They're just different. And we're no different than that. I think the new high in general, when I got the job at Stonehill last year, I went back and watched like 20 of Stonehill's games from year one in the league. I can confidently say the just level of play last year compared to the year before in the league in general was higher. And I expect that to increase this year. I don't want to put a number on it, 5%, 10%, I have no idea, but it's getting better and it's going to continue to get better as we are able to get to a point where maybe we have access to certain resources that we don't have today down the road. I'm confident that we'll get there.
Gotcha. And recently there was a new ruling by, I don't know, one of the courts that relates to the NCAA and scholarships. And I believe the basic premise of what's going to be changing as it relates to women's hockey is that there's going to now be a school can pick to either have 18 scholarships that they can share amongst the players in any fraction that they want, or you have 26 scholarships and all 26 players on the team get full ride scholarships. What do you think the impact is going to be on women's hockey, and then as it relates to a school like Assumption?
Yeah, I think the schools that choose to go that 26 scholarship route, obviously they're gonna, their resources, it's not rocket science, are way higher than a lot of the schools who aren't going to be able to opt into that. I do see challenges with that. I mean, you can't dress 26 players. It can be hard to manage all those scholarships off the ice if maybe you recruited a kid that was expecting a certain role and that role isn't panning out for whatever reason. I can see that being a little bit hard to manage. But in terms of what it's going to do to women's hockey, I mean, again, I'm anything that creates more opportunity for young women to be able to play Division One hockey, I'm supportive of. So if that means 20% of the teams in the country are able to adopt that rule right away, and the rest of the country lagging and catching up, but we'll get there hopefully. It is what it is. I don't have much say in that matter, but at the end of the day, if there are more opportunities for young women to play college hockey, I'm in support of that. As for us at Assumption, doesn't really impact us right now because we are so young as a program. I don't think we are going to have to deal with that stuff right now. Down the road, we'll probably have to make some decisions, but as of today, nothing has really changed for us.
Got it. All right. So let's get into the recruiting side of things. Like I mentioned earlier, you got 16 sophomores, and then you got a couple of juniors, three seniors, etc. So maybe just talk about what that recruiting class for 2027 is going to look like, and maybe just talk about where you are at right now for 2026. Because that
Sure.
2027 class, if you really graduate all 16, that's a heck of a lot of work and a lot of spots to be filling.
Yeah. So, I'm definitely trying to balance the class sizes out a little bit. Um, we may, we're still, finishing up some 2025 recruiting, and that'll be done soon. But, yeah, we're not, it's obviously very hard to, when you're starting a brand new team, you need to get most kids from that class, but you don't want to have to replace 16 kids every 4 years. That's, close to impossible. So we're in the process of hopefully balancing that out a little bit. I hope that 16 number is closer to 9 or 10 by that point. That's the hope. With the fluidity of the transfer portal now, it's a blessing and a curse. It could help us as a program, but it could also hurt if people end up leaving. Last off season at Stonehill, we won the New High and we still lost 3 players to the transfer portal. So I don't think anyone's immune to it. Even the historically top teams in the country have lost players to the portal, and I don't see that slowing down any day in the short term for sure. But yeah, I hope to balance those classes out a little bit more. May not be done right away, but that is my goal these next couple of years.
Gotcha. All right. So now with the start of the youth hockey season starting up, if players, let's say they were interested in Assumption for the class of 2027, or maybe even still for the class of 2026, what advice do you have, as they start attending events, especially on the East Coast, which might be in your backyard?
Yeah, that's a great question. Definitely attend events with college coaches. It helps to get to know people and to work with college coaches early on. I'm a proponent of people reaching out to college staffs preemptively, even before we're allowed to speak with them. Send emails, not like novels by any means, but basic information and what you may be attracted to about Assumption or our staff or our team. Something that makes you stand out a little bit from everybody else. And definitely double check your emails. I can't tell you how many times I've gotten ones addressed to the Terriers or the Eagles or something like that, clearly being copy paste, which is totally fine. Just double check those emails, check those details off.
Yes, and just a little plug for the Champs app messaging tool where we actually solve that. So you can't send something with the wrong name or the wrong team
Yes.
in there. So, all right. And so when you go to events, so I'm assuming during the month of September, you and your staff are going to be going out and going to some showcases / tournaments. What is it that you're looking for in players?
Number one thing I look for is skating ability. Just from physical attributes is absolutely skating. When you get to Division I college hockey, the game is obviously quicker, the pace is there, but you have way less time and space than you're used to at the AAA level or high school level, prep school level, wherever you're coming from. So I look for skating ability and decision making. If you can make a decision quickly, get the puck off your stick quickly, those are the 2 big things for me that I look for. And the last thing is, in general, body language. How are you on the bench? If something doesn't go your way, can we tell up in the stands? Is it apparent? Is it obvious? Or is it kind of like what I mentioned earlier with a goalie having the mind of a goldfish? Can I not tell? Can you just get back out there for your next shift and make a play and be at your best no matter what's going on around you? So those are 3 things I look for when I'm recruiting forwards in D.
Perfect. All right. Last question for you. So if let's say you're 2026 and maybe even a 2025, but you haven't found your home yet, what advice do you have for these players or parents who are a little bit nervous with where things are at and finding a home?
Yeah, this is easier said than done, but focus on what you can control. There's no sense in worrying about who's up in the stands or who's committing where if it doesn't involve you. You can't control any of that. What you can control is your effort on the ice, your effort off the ice, taking care of your schoolwork. I can't tell you how important it is to do well in school because it opens so many more opportunities. Not only, higher academic schools, but there are some schools out there who can give merit and academic based scholarships on top of athletic scholarships like Assumption. So taking care of all that stuff, massive. And to those kids entering their senior year who are still waiting, there's plenty of opportunity. Most kids out there who are playing at this level of AAA hockey are going to be playing in Naha or Pip, or just played in Naha and Pip. They're going to be playing at Stony Creek. There's plenty of opportunities. There are plenty of schools out there, and just keep at it and keep contacting the schools that you feel are realistic fits for you at this stage in your career.
Perfect. All right. That's excellent advice. We covered a lot of territory here, Joe. We talked about, what it takes to be a goaltender, your coaching career, your playing career, everything about Assumption University and Nuha, and obviously a lot of great advice on the recruiting process. So thank you so much for doing this. And I want to wish you the best of luck this coming season for the sophomore year of the Greyhounds and your first year as a head coach.
Thanks, Ray. I appreciate it. Anytime.
I really want to thank Joe for joining me on the podcast. It was great to hear all his insights about the goalie position. He also shared some great information about Assumption, the NUHA conference, and the recruiting process. You can connect with Joe on the Assumption team website or his Champs app profile. Links to both are in the show notes.